Inside Texas Politics, 3rd edition by Brandon Rottenhouse. Chapter 12, Part 1, Local Government. One hot June afternoon in Overton, Texas, 7 and 8-year-old Zoe and Andrea Green set up a lemonade stand, hoping to raise money for a Father's Day gift. Police Chief Clyde Cartel paid them a visit and shut down the operation because the girls lacked a $150 peddler's permit from the city. The incident made headlines, and Governor Abbott pointed to this regulation as a classic example of government overreach. When he set out to axe this local regulation and more in the 2019 legislative session, calling it a common sense law, he tweeted, on signing the legislation, "Capitalism for kids is for kids." Hoping to encourage businesses to operate across the city and county lines, Governor Abbott critiqued the multiple rifle shot approach legislators were taking to override local regulations and instead suggested a broad law to prevent local regulations from exceeding a standard set by the state. The tensions centered on disagreements about local control, which level of government should have it, and when not all of the governor's suggested legislation passed, but limitations on local authorities such as the bill legalizing lemonade stands did. Legalization in recent years has aimed to roll back or limit local government's power to ban fees on tree removal, hike local property taxes, issue ordinances banning plastic bags, fingerprint drivers of ride-sharing companies like Uber, designated historic landmarks, and ban short-term rentals like Airbnb. These preemption laws are becoming more common in state houses across the country, especially as Republican legislators attempt to control local municipal government that are run by Democrats. Preemption hinges on the supremacy of state laws that control the actions of local government and restrain local flexibility. Not all of these efforts pass, but the long-fought feud between state and local leaders quickly turns into open warfare. A central struggle of modern government is the battle between state and local authorities over social policy and financial autonomy. Cities are given some autonomy to act, but are still tethered to the laws of the state and are dependent on state and federal funds to operate. In this chapter, we examine the powers and types of local government. We then explore the role of smaller governments in local politics. Finally, we examine the problems facing local government, pressures on city government to provide resources to residents and to promote economic growth may collide as modern cities confront tight fiscal times, minimal state aid, and a public that demands low taxes but robust services. 12.1, the powers and functions of local government. Local governments are often considered less powerful than state or national governments, and yet the actions taken by local governments have some of the most profound impacts on the daily lives of Texans. Local governments provide an extensive range of services, most often related to public safety, fire and police, sanitation, planning for future development, maintenance of roads, incentives for local economic development, and access to recreational facilities. Yet local governments struggle with the state government, businesses, and interest groups, and even in their own citizens in providing these services. The Dillon's Rule. Although the state and federal government share power across a range of policy issues, local government is often fenced in by state authority. The U.S. Constitution does not mention local government. However, state leaders have interpreted the 10th Amendment as giving states authority over local entities. In 1868, Dillon's rule, named after the Iowa Justice John Foster Dillon, whose legal rulings founded the principle, established that state governments can place restrictions on municipalities as long as these rules do not violate the state's constitution. Furthermore, unless the state directly grants a local government a specific power, local governments must assume they do not have that power. Texas grants local governments the power to choose the form of government, the fiscal role of local government, and which offices can be filled by election or appointment. Local governments spend considerable time lobbying state governments for expanded power or fewer restrictions, and states have delegated more authority to cities in the last half century. Today, state power still rules the yard, but power struggles do erupt when city and state needs periodically diverge. Local regulation. City governments legislate by using ordinances. The local laws of municipal area passed by city council in providing services and dealing more directly with the people. Local governments often grapple with policy issues that are not addressed at the state or national level. Everybody loves spring break, for example, but when the city council on South Padre Island, a popular beach spot for spring breakers, grew worried about underage drinking and emergency services capacity during peak vacation times, they passed an ordinance in 2017 to require permits for organizers of events of over 1,000 people. 12.2. The Fort Worth City Council ruffled some feathers when it passed an ordinance to limit residents to 12 hens if they live on an acre of land or less. And in San Antonio, City Council considered an ordinance to add new fines for drivers who illegally pass stopped school buses, authorizing school districts to install cameras on buses to capture violators. 12.2. County government. Texas and much of the United States witnessed an explosion of local governments as rural expanses converted to urban centers during the 19th and 20th centuries. The number of current local governments in the United States totals just over 89,000, many in Texas. See figure 12.1. The illusion of a small government ethos in Texas is shattered by the sheer number of and impact of local governments. Texas has several different types of local governments, counties, cities, and special districts that scramble to fulfill the growing needs of the people. The state legislature approves the creation of new counties. During the Republic of Texas, the state had a modest 23 counties. When Texas became a state, the number increased to 36. By 1931 and continuing to the present, the number became fixed at 254. The rise in the number of counties multiplied by the number of elected officials and gave residents a more direct relationship with county officials. Counties are the local arm of state government carrying out state laws because they cannot enact their own ordinances. Counties serve dual purposes. They provide government services for residents and administrative services on behalf of the state. Counties' responsibilities include public safety, property tax collection, jails, transportation and roads, elections, and environmental protection. Feel free to pause this. Some counties are small. Rockwall County, east of Texas, is only 148 square miles. Some counties are huge. Brewster County, home to the Terlingua Chili Cook-Off is more than 6,000 square miles, 3 times the size of Delaware. Size impacts governance with larger counties have few restrictions in larger counties. For example, county government leaders play a bigger role in the economic development of unincorporated areas. Regions that are administered as part of a county but not a city, by contrast, 173 smaller counties. Those counties that do not have or are not adjacent to counties with 250,000 residents or fewer are not allowed by state to have a fire code that would establish regulations on fire prevention and the storage of dangerous goods. The legislature rigidly sets the structure of county governments, whether the county includes just over 100 people, Loving County, or over 4 million people of Harris County. This structure comprises dozens of local officials who administer county government elected by the county voters. Only the Texas legislature can, and sometimes does, authorize changes to county government structure. County Judge and Commissioner's Court. At the top of county government are the County Judge and the Commissioner's Court. Each Texas county is run by a county judge, and a commissioner's court is made up of 4 county commissioners. These commissioners serve 4-year terms and represent districts that must have equal populations as decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in Avery versus Midland County, 1968. County judges are frequently called on to manage crises that occur in their jurisdictions, as they are responsible for homeland security and emergency management in their counties. County commissioners adopt a tax rate for the county, oversee a budget that they use to establish public works projects and maintain county buildings and facilities. The largest expenditures are infrastructures, roads or bridges, and maintenance of the county jail. Like cities, counties often engage in regulation by Texas law. Game rooms, businesses that operate popular eight-liner slot machines that cannot pay out more than $5 can legally operate. However, it is an open secret that payouts and prizes worth more are doled out to winning customers. Tarrant County approved a laundry list of requirements for booming game rooms, including limited operating hours, restrictions on locations next to schools or churches, and maintaining clear signage signaling it is a game room. County commissioners allocate funds for projects and make strategic decisions for the county. For instance, the Grimes County Commissioners Court voted unanimously in 2016 to require the developers of a high-speed rail connecting Dallas to Houston and Houston to obtain homeowner approval to build the line and maintain access to county roads. The purpose of the requirement was to protect the farms and ranches that dotted the central Texas county. When county commissioners misuse their budget power, however, they can get into legal trouble. After Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price was indicted on allegations a lobbyist paid almost $1 million in bribes in cash, cars, and land exchange for actions that benefited corporate clients, cities like Dallas and Austin passed mandatory lobbying regulation laws. County Sheriff, the county sheriff, part administrator, part politician, and full-time law enforcement officer, is often referred to as the land of the county line. Sheriffs are charged with enforcing state laws, managing and operating the county jail, serving warrants and civil papers to residents, seizing property after court judgments, enforcing traffic laws on county roads, and providing security for the courts. In rural areas, the sheriff is often an all around diplomat, troubleshooter, master of the county courthouse, and the last person teenagers want to see while drinking beer with their friends on remote county roads. In larger urban areas, sheriffs and their many deputies patrol county roads and oversee the county jail. The number of inmates in any given month can reach several thousand. Careful management is critical as the jails functionally serve as the largest mental health facility in each county because those arrested in awaiting bail or trial often have mental health issues. County prosecutors. The county attorney and district attorney are the chief prosecutors for criminal cases in Texas counties. The county attorney operates at the county court level, and the district attorney handles the district court level. These officials often make policy as well. In a controversial move, Harris County District Attorney Kim Ogg announced in 2017 that people caught with less than 4 ounces of marijuana had the option of taking a drug education course. The objective was to give nonviolent drug users a chance to avoid conviction, save space in jail, and reserve court administrative resources. Opponents of the move challenged the ruling, stressing the district attorney needed to get tougher, not more lenient on drug abusers. County administrators. Several positions are purely administrative and have little influence on policy. A district court, if a county has one, is predominantly a legal record keeper, administrating child support payments, processing court fees, and recording all proceedings of the district courts. If you want to run a felony background check on your future spouse, the district clerk keeps those records. A county clerk maintains county records like birth certificates, issues vital documents like marriage license, and serves as the chief elections officer. Although primarily administrators, clerks can find themselves in the middle of state or national political battles. Following the U.S. Supreme Court's 2015 ruling that states could not restrict same-sex couples from marrying, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton issued a statement encouraging clerks to follow their own religious beliefs and not issue marriage license to same-sex couples, but also to expect lawsuits for violating the law. The Attorney General's advice proved confusing to many clerks. Brewster County Clerk Berta Rios Martinez emailed colleagues, "I just had my first gay couple come in for a marriage license and I ran them off. Did I do it right? Help." Ultimately, clerks are required to issue licenses, and those who refused were reassigned to a different job responsibility. County finance officials. Several elected officials handle the county finances. The county tax assessor, collector collects revenue for both the state and the county, and in some counties maintains the county voter rolls. The county auditor oversees the distribution of county funds. The county treasurer receives, manages, and pays out county funds for both general revenue, though property taxes controlled by the Commissioner's Court, and special revenue from fees or other dedicated revenue controlled by other governments such as special districts. 12.3 City governments. From the end of the Republic in 1845 until 1858, the only way to incorporate a city in Texas was by special act of state legislature. In the state's early days, most cities were general law cities, operating under laws created by legislature. Today, as city populations and responsibilities have grown, most large cities are home rule cities. giving them greater autonomy. Texas has approximately 1,200 incorporated cities, general law cities. In the 19th century, a Texas legislator passed general laws that define the structure and powers of general law cities. If a general law city has not been specifically granted authority to act by the legislator, it may not undertake the action. General law cities, for example, may not add mandatory fees to utility bills without permission of the state. State law officials may also step in when local ordinances conflict with state laws. This happens in 2016 when a group called Texas Voices for Reason and Justice sent a letter to 45 Texas general law cities demanding they repeal residency restrictions for sex offenders. The group argued that towns that passed these restrictions were in violation of the state constitution because the legislator had not granted them express permission to pass such laws. The state agreed and the restrictions were lifted. Home rule cities. By the early 20th century, the state was growing rapidly enough to outstrip the legislator's ability to routinely deal with local matters. The number of cities by about 10 per year. By 1913, the state allowed municipalities to become home rule cities, giving them the authority to choose the structure of their government, such as size and method used to elect the city council, annex land adjacent to the city, set property tax rates, create boards and commissions to handle city issues, and enact policies and rules for the city as long as they were not prohibited by state or federal law. Unlike general law cities, a home rule city is permitted to do anything unless prohibited by state law. This is referred to as inherent power and has been sanctioned by Texas Supreme Court. Any city in Texas with more than 5,000 people can become a home rule city. Most large cities in Texas have home rule. Only 19 of the 309 cities with more than 5,000 Texans do not have a home rule status. A home rule city charter serves as the municipality's organizational plan. Similar to a state or national constitution, a city charter establishes the form of government, sets the rules for operation and amendment, and establishes procedures for taxing and spending city finances. City government may amend the charter as needed. Citizens can force lawmakers on the city council to call an election to amend a city charter by filing out a petition signed by 5% of qualified voters or 20,000 qualified voters, whichever is less. Indeed, one of the main advantages of home rule cities over general law cities is the mechanism of direct democracy. An initiative is a process through which local voters can directly propose ordinances to city charters if the proper number of signatures is obtained. The number is set by the city. The initiative is placed on the ballot in an election, and if a majority of voters agree, the initiative becomes law. For example, voters in Texarkana used an initiative to approve beer and wine sales in 2014, allowing them to keep pace with their alcohol selling kin on the Arkansas side of the border. A referendum enables voters to repeal existing ordinances that a city council won't rescind. Once citizens gather a sufficient number of signatures, the ordinance is put before the city council to repeal on its own or is put to all voters for repeal. College Station, for example, used a referendum to submit to voters a plan to ban the use of red light cameras, unmanned digital cameras that photographs a vehicle running a red light. College Station citizens then voted to remove the red light by cameras by a slim 51%. A recall enables voters to oust sitting members of the city council before their terms are up. Most cities only allow recalls after a council member has served for a set period and limit of the number of recall attempts of the same council person. In each case, these powers are designed to give citizens greater control over local government. Although few of these recalls are successful in removing the public officials in question, the cities have to front the cost of these elections. Over 4,400 Plano residents signed a recall petition against Plano City Council member Tom Harrison after he posted an inflammatory and seemingly anti-Islam Facebook post in 2018 after a group. A Texas court appeals ruled the city used the wrong number to certify the petition ending the recall effort. Annexation. In the past, the strongest power of Home Rule City was annexation, the joining of land into the boundary of an existing city. It is through annexation authority that Big Texas became gigantic. A larger city could not annex incorporated land that is unified as part of a city, but rather targeted unincorporated areas which are often developing or ripe for development. Annexation provided a larger tax base, thus enabling cities, Annexation provided a larger tax base, thus enabling cities to benefit from the financial growth of outlying, usually suburban areas. These growing cities pulled in more taxpayers and became wealthier. In fact, if San Antonio had the same boundaries today as in 1945, it would have the highest poverty and unemployment rate of any city in the nation. Annexation of more territory expanded in that city's revenue. In the past, unincorporated areas or cities were generally powerless to stop a larger city from annexing it into their territory because cities did not need permission of the residents of an area to annex it. Beginning in 1994, for example, the city of Houston announced plans to annex an affluent suburb called Kingwood. With over 50,000 residents, protesters showed up in busloads in Austin asking legislators to halt Houston's expansion and carrying banners that read "Free Kingwood." Residents offered $4 million to the city of Houston in exchange for the community's independence. Kingwood residents also filed a lawsuit charging that annexation laws amounted to taxation without representation, echoing the familiar rallying cry of the American Revolution. All efforts failed, and Kingwood was absorbed into Houston city limits. In 2019, however, the legislature passed and Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill to end forced annexation for Texas' 10 largest counties, protecting the property rights of those in rural parts of Texas. According to advocates, opponents argue that the law will kill the ability of larger cities to manage growth and development as population in large counties continue to boom. Cities, however, can also tax and regulate unincorporated areas without fully annexing them. Under the 1999 reforms, cities were allowed to create agreements with local utility districts to charge a 1% sales tax in locations outside the proper city limits. With city budgets more difficult to balance and outlying areas wary of full annexation, this regulation served as a backdoor solution to the annexation quagmire. Cities also use extraterritorial jurisdiction laws to control subdivision practices in unincorporated bordering territory. Businesses or developers seeking to build in those areas are subject to city regulations and rules. This is the end of part 1, chapter 12.